Today's review is The Bride of Frankenstein. I reviewed the original Frankenstein last year. Thought this year, for 31 Days of Horror, would be a good opportunity to review its sequel, its follow-up, also directed by James Whale, and also starring Boris Karloff as the Frankenstein monster. Karloff the Uncanny, always so great in his roles. This is the Legacy collection that I have. It comes with 5 of the Universal released Frankenstein films. This one, Bride of Frankenstein, and the first one are on the same disc. So, if you are inclined to do so, you can watch both back to back, which makes it a very epic experience, I guess. So, that's something that I usually like doing because I think the movies complement themselves complement each other pretty well. But also, this one stands alone, great. I think. And you know, all the Universal released monster movies, they're all classics in their own rights. But I would say, and I think most people would agree, that there's something about Bride of Frankenstein and that particular movie, this particular movie, it would stand as the eternal masterpiece among them. And so, with all these movies, there is something that really attests to audiences' affection for horror. I mean, these movies, they go back. They're almost a century old at this point, which is nuts. But they continue to be a part of our popular culture. Everyone knows the Frankenstein monster as depicted in this film. Everybody knows the story, and it's just something that's going to last. And I think among them all, I think this, I would say, probably is the best made of them all, if that makes any sense. Which I hope it does, because I know a lot of people have a soft spot, have a spot in their heart for Bride of Frankenstein. So I mean, even by its general principle of existence alone, it's interesting, it's intriguing because at the time, I mean, you wouldn't see too many sequels. I mean, it wasn't like, say, a usual thing where, and nowadays you plan the first movie, you have a set release date for the sequel before it's even out in theaters. That's just how it is. I don't know, if that's a necessarily good or bad thing, but that's just what you see. But this was kind of like a sequel by demand, I guess, because obviously it took what it could from the source material, but we needed more. And so they came up with this sequel. And of course, even at the time, since it wasn't a usual thing, you wouldn't have that, part 2. Part 3, part 4, blah, 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 blah. You see that so much. Like, even, in the 80s. I love the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, Halloween movies, Jason movies, but, you always see, like, Friday the 13th, part 2, part 3, part 4, whatever. Even today. Like, with, like, Halloween, at least you'd see something like the Curse of Michael Myers, Revenge of Michael Myers, whatever. But, like, now they barely bother with those kind of subtitles to the titles. Like, you'll just see Paranormal Activity 1, Paranormal Activity 2, 3, Saw 1, Saw 2, Saw 3, Saw 4, Saw 5, Saw 6, etc. Maybe what's even worse is like when they come up with those generic subtitles to avoid the numbers. Like Resident Evil Apocalypse, Resident Evil Extinction, Resident Evil Afterlife, Resident Evil Retribution, Resident Evil Into Darkness, Resident Evil and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Like, whatever. It gets really fucking stupid when it has nothing to do with the movie at all. Like, you can come up with any title. Resurrection, The Return, whatever, any generic kind of title. But anyway, getting off track here. No, but I mean, with Bride of Frankenstein, it is something that is specific to the plot of this movie, and even by the title alone, it's like this. It's like a heart-stopping, intriguing title all in itself. The Bride of Frankenstein. What a grand title that is, and it could imply, I mean, a great many things because, I mean, when you think about it, like. Frankenstein, we always like have that debate, like, oh, is it referring to the doctor or is it referring to the monster? I guess ultimately you can argue both because it's acceptable both. I think even in this movie they refer to the monster as Frankenstein, at least at one point. So you think, oh, is this the Bride of Frankenstein as in it's the monster's bride? Is it the Bride of Frankenstein as it's in the doctor's creation? He creates the bride. Or is it his real life bride who's kind of this redeeming female figure, as we see in these movies, who wants to bring him to the good side, wants him to forget all this, just come away with me, darling, things like that. So it could mean a great many things. Like, even if you're getting like highly conceptual, it could mean, the Bride of Frankenstein. He's choosing this life over a normal life kind of thing. So there's that. I mean, you can take it as you want, but it is sort of an interpretive title. But it's a very good title, I think, and it's just a very, very simple kind of title, but it demands your intrigue, I think. So uh, even right at the very beginning, this is just kind of a different movie, which is weird to say because I don't think it was different at the time in terms of sequels, but it's something that, even today, it's like, well, this movie's kind of meta. I mean, it's taking place, like, it's framed at the very beginning with Mary Shelley, the author of Frankenstein, and her either husband or fiance and another writer. They're talking about how scary, how great her work was, and oh, haha, how a woman could write something so scary, haha, and they're like clamoring for more. So is there more of this story? And she's like, oh, yes, and let me tell you. And that's kind of how the movie begins. And it gives you like a little recap in case you hadn't seen the first movie. So it gives you the gist of it. And it moves on. And other than that, it takes place directly where the first one left off with them, with the villagers, the angry mob burning down the windmill to kill the monster. But of course he's not dead. And so what a lot of this movie of is, it is Dr. Frankenstein recovering, but also being tempted to continue his work by the addition of a great character, Dr. Pretorius, who's an excellent addition to this movie. So it's kind of like this, they play with this theme a lot. Like, you'd see it in something like Reanimator too, when you think about it, where it is this strange triangle of, okay, this colleague who's also interested in this dark science, who wants to tempt him over to this side, but meanwhile you have his wife who wants him to, or his fiance, I should say, who's like, just I'm a real person. You don't need to create any person. You can create life with me. You can marry me. We can create life together. That kind of concept. So I think that's kind of an interesting theme to the movie. And then you'll see with a few movies of this nature, I guess. So that's kind of an interesting, strange, bizarre love triangle that you'll see in this movie. And yeah, you can, since James Whale, of course, being gay, you can take whatever undercurrent you want from the themes of this movie, of course. But of course, I mean, underlying theme as a whole, it's like, man can't create life as a woman can. And we had to have a woman writer to tell us that, apparently. So it's provocative, I think. I think Mary Shelley, her concept, I mean, it has endured in not just this work, in other works, for good reason. It's an interesting concept. But also, another part of this movie, I mean, really, when you kind of think about it, the movie's star is the Frankenstein monster, is Karloff, kind of this doomed soul walking the earth, like, with nowhere to go. I mean, of course, there's these themes of man playing God, and what right does he have, and what if there is no such thing as a God-fearing man, and what if this concept of God is up for grabs, and what can we do with that? But we, stop to think, well, what about what's being created? What rights do these things have? And it explores that with the Frankenstein monster, and how he ultimately, living his sort of lonely existence, wants that bride. He wants his bride. But there's some great scenes, again, running into the mob and being crucified, and the great scene with the blind man, which is just a classic scene, a very moving scene, and you come to think of, okay, what instincts does this creature have? We know he doesn't like fire, obviously, but what kind of draws him into the blind man is the music, the violin music, that sad and entrancing music that kind of brings him in, and how, this damnable creature, this horrible plague on society, this disgusting thing against all laws of nature, of science, this horrible thing, how it will seek friendship in this old man, smoke cigars, friend good, alone bad. And I think it's a great scene, and it is kind of a moving scene. So that's like one of the most memorable scenes in the movie, which has been noted, and I think even more than a couple of times, like especially with, of course, it's been spoofed in Young Frankenstein, but it's just something that it sticks with audiences. So I mean, ultimately, it does lead up to the big showdown, which is very dramatic and very nice. You have Pretorius, you have Frankenstein, you have the creature, you have Frankenstein's uh, fiance held hostage to force him into continuing his work so he can create the Bride of Frankenstein, or the Bride for Frankenstein, or however you want to put it. And you kind of come to think, as he's getting deeper and deeper into the work, well, did he really need that kind of incentive? Like, because you kind of know that he wanted to do it. He wanted this. So it's interesting. But I mean, ultimately, what it's driving towards, aside from the playing God stuff, I think it is more focused on the creation itself, and what instincts does it have, what morals does it have, what kind of a soul does it have, and that's interesting. That's like fucking heavy for this kind of a movie when you think about it. And so when the bride is created, when the bride looks into her prospective mates and is terrified, absolutely terrified, he doesn't take it well. But it kind of occurs to him that, yeah, we are abominations. We belong dead, as he says. And that's an interesting arrival point, because, if he could create this abomination that could arrive to that kind of conclusion, is it really such an abomination? So it's kind of a paradox, I would say. But I've just spoiled the movie, sorry. There's spoilers in this review. I'll have to note that. But I mean, it came out in like 1934, so whatever. Was it 1934? Damned if I know. But anyway, that'll be my review of Bride of Frankenstein. One of the best, one of the all-time classics. James Whale, just a masterpiece from him, absolutely. Boris Karloff, what a great performance as the beloved monster, as the horrifying monster, as the iconic monster for all time. So just an incredible movie. So definitely one to watch during Halloween season. Almost a required viewing for any fan of horror. It's brilliant. It's a masterpiece, and I love it. And that'll be my review for today. Stay tuned for more.